Well, guys, the country is still dealing with freezing temperatures as millions of Americans are getting slammed by an Arctic blast. It's so cold this morning, President Biden had chains put on the tennis balls of his walker. That's it. She chained him up, yeah.
Put y'all back in chains. That's right. Now I guess Biden is fair game. Now, the Democrat Party has made it so. And so now everyone can observe the fact that Joe Biden needs to put chains on his walker when it snows. Were it not for double standards, liberals would have no standards at all. And then there are leftists. I know, I'm kind of thinking I like the Gulf of America. You like the Gulf of America? Mexico surrounds, roughly half of the Gulf of Mexico, and the United States of America the other half. And it's important, the Gulf of Mexico. We got a lot of fish there. You see the dolphins in Florida that died of the bird flu? Dolphins, bird flu. How does that even happen? What are the birds go and peck at their little blowholes? How does a dolphin get bird flu? But they've got apparently 3. It's right there in the newspapers. It's in the papers. 3 dolphins that got the bird flu, and they died, and they didn't know how they, we got a dolphin that's dead over here. Did the Democrats kill it? Did they, what do they get it with that ship that's looking at the bottom of the ocean so they can put windmills in there? They killed a lot of whales that way. New Jersey and on the East Coast of the United States. More whales than the Japanese killed in the same time frame. And the Democrats are still angry with the Japanese because they're racists. You know how racist the Democrats are. But honestly, good morning to you and happy Wednesday. That means it's hump day, and there are two major hump day events. You probably know what they are. First, in the Clinton household, Bill and Hillary Clinton, it's Hillary got to be out of the house, by breakfast time because Bill likes to get up early, if you know what I mean. So Bill, he's got to have Hillary out of the house, and that's she doesn't like the feeling. She wakes up face down in a pool of her own dried vomit every Wednesday morning on the linoleum floor of the kitchen of one of their mega mansions. Which mega mansion did they wake up in today, Michael? We don't know. You don't have the tracker on her iPhone. But Hillary waking up face down in a pool of her own dried vomit, laying next to an empty 1-gallon cardboard box of cheap New Zealand Chardonnay that she chugged last night. Honestly, like Kamala. I hear she drinks almost as much as Kamala Harris, but maybe not as much. And she's got to be out of the house because it's hump day, and Bill Clinton, he demands it. Look, he used to be the president, and, of course, Hillary Clinton, never the president. Not going to be the president, wasn't the president, not handing out presidential medals of freedom. She had one handed to her. That had to be humiliating, didn't it? Honestly, that's just amazing. How appalling. She just, hey, I know you didn't get to be president, but here's this nice medal. It's a consolation prize. It has a kind of a nylon ribbon that goes with it. Let me see if I can clasp that behind your neck. Not very good at this either, but we got that going. It also means that it's Mailbag Day. Mailbag Day Wednesday, hump day, Mailbag Day here on the Chris Plant Show, and I have in my hands right now 4 questions, mailbag questions ready to go, and they have nothing to do with the madness, the disaster movie that is California, the greater Los Angeles metropolitan area, up in flames in horrifying ways. It's absolutely nuts what's going on there. And they have this governor out there, Gavin Newsome. You may recall President Trump went out to California about 4 years ago, more than 4 years ago now. There were giant wildfires in California. President Trump, he was president then, went out there and met with Governor Gavin Newsome, the hair gel guy. And he met with him. The place was just scorched all around the two of them. And President Trump explained, and he was being polite, but he explained, in other countries like Finland, what they do? They groom the forests, not the children, but the forest. They leave the children alone, but they groom the forest. They clean up the what President Trump called the floors, the forest bed. They clean up all the loose debris, and they make it less likely to go up in flames. And if a fire does happen, it's less likely to spread like wildfire. Where do you think that term comes from? But President Trump said to Governor Gavin Newsome in 2020, he said, listen, you got to do something to clean up these forests so this doesn't happen again. We got to put an end to this. And the Democrats, because they're environmentalists, they cause more wildfires. They do this in Canada, too. Talked about this, remember when the whole eastern United States was enveloped in smoke, and it turned out it was from Canada. They're smoking so much dope up there, smoking so much pot, that New York and Washington were engulfed in smoke, and everybody was stoned. Everybody must get stoned. And it wasn't really, there were forest fires. And then what we learned was that people that call themselves liberals in Canada, which is America's hat, they said, I know, let's not clean up the forests at all. Let's not let loggers go into the forest, because loggers, you see, logging companies, lumber companies, they go in there, they groom the forests and not the children. They clean up the beds of the forest, and they cut roads through the forests. And that's what people that call themselves liberals didn't want. You can't cut roads through these forests. You know, I mean, Canada's the second largest country in the world behind Russia, and it's very large, and there are very few people living there. About the same number of people live in California, although there are fewer and fewer people living in California with each passing day. But that said, they said the so-called libs in Canada, no, you can't. The logging companies can't. They can't cut trees down so we can build houses and make toothpicks and, you know, everything else. We do a lot of stuff with wood. We make paper. We do all sorts of things. And libs said, no, you can't do that. So when the wildfires begin, often set by liberals, then so-called, and then they spread, and the firefighters can't get in there because there are no roads that the logging companies had created, which had happened for generations. And it allowed the firefighters to get in there and contain the fires and eventually put them out. But we've got essentially the same, and that's why Canada had these giant fires that led to New York City being shrouded in smoke, Washington, D.C., Chicago, because of these giant fires in Canada. But one of the amazing things, I almost said great things about liberals, one of the amazing things about liberals is that they never learn. They learn from nothing. They learn nothing from the 20th century and the Soviet Union and the Castro boys and Pol Pot and Mao Zedong. They learn nothing at all about communism and socialism from Hugo Chavez. They learn nothing. They learn absolutely nothing. And they learn nothing about grooming forests in order to be an environmentalist, a rational, intelligent environmentalist. If you actually want to protect the environment, you let logging companies do their thing and grow trees. You know, see, trees are what we call a renewable resource. They're renewable. You cut them down, then you plant more trees, and then you get carbon offsets, and they sell anything, really. They're like street corner hucksters, but never mind that. So in any event, I learned from what we witnessed in Canada, and American environmentalists are incapable of learning anything, because it turns out people on the left are dumber than we had originally thought. And we had originally thought that they're pretty dumb, but they're much dumber than that. Anyway, 4 years ago, it was 2020, and now it's 2025. So more than 4 years ago, President Trump in California with Hair Gel Boy, and standing in the burnt-out, scorched-out ruins of another massive fire in California, President Trump talked about the importance of cleaning up the forests, and Gavin Newsome smiled at the cameras and winked at the news reporter, and then what happened later, because it's the Democrat Party, and then California did nothing, because they never learn anything from anything, because there are too many people that call themselves liberals. And so the fires are going absolutely crazy. And beautiful, beautiful Pacific Palisades, beautiful Malibu, California, up in flames. Pasadena, inland, up in flames, absolutely nuts. And the mayor, who is a left-wing extremist, Karen Bass, used to be in the House of Representatives. She was so awful, so terrible, left-wing, radical, extremist, racist. She's a WOC, and she was in the House of Representatives, then said, I want to be the mayor of Los Angeles because, gangs or something. And so she ran for and was elected mayor of Los Angeles, California, a very large, sprawling metropolis with all kinds of things going on. And with these fires going on, where is Karen Bass? That's what I want to know. She is not there. You remember the head of the FBI in New Orleans was not present on New Year's Eve and New Year's Day for the terrorist attack. And turns out, where was he? He was in Italy. I think he was in Italy on vacation when the head of the FBI knew that it was New Year's Eve coming, got this terror threat. I guess they didn't know anything about. And then they had the Sugar Bowl was scheduled for New Year's Day, although it had to be delayed by a day because of the radical Islamic jihadi terrorist massacre on New Year's Eve in New Orleans, right, in the party district. And the FBI chief was gone. Turns out he's a Democrat, and he was gone. And then they brought that woman with the nose ring out who said, oh, no, this is not a terrorist attack, but we are defusing some IEDs after he ran over all these people and shot the police. And he's a jihadi, but no, it's not a terrorist attack, she said with her nose ring. Later on in the day, she showed up for another briefing, and her nose ring was gone. And I said, hey, wait a minute, what happened to her nose ring? Her nose ring is gone. And I said, turns out it violates FBI regs, but she didn't care. She's a WOC also. She's a woman of color also. But in Los Angeles, Karen Bass, the left-wing radical extremist, WOC, she's gone. She's not there. And where is she? Well, she's in Africa because she's a WOC. She's an African-American woman, Karen Bass, former member of the House of Representatives, terrible, awful representative. And naturally, they elected her mayor of Los Angeles because place is full of Los Angeles morons, California morons. And another reason why people are fleeing there like it's on fire. Karen Bass was actually and is actually in Africa. She's in Ghana. In Ghana. I've been to Ghana briefly, Accra. You don't have to go there. You can miss it if it's on your list. Don't worry about it. But Karen Bass, this is from several days ago now. Karen Bass to attend inauguration of John Dramani Mahama as Ghana president. Now, why is she going to Ghana for the inauguration of Dramani Mahama? No particular reason. It's just she's... Don't you know who she is? So she's in Africa. She's in Ghana while this is going on. But fortunately, she built in some great infrastructure there. And the Democrats, they built in great infrastructure because in 2022, now it's 2025, in 2022, they were very proud to announce in Los Angeles the appointment of their first DEI fire chief, chosen for being LGBTQ+, right? And she is the L. She's the L part of the, and everybody loves L's, right? One of the most popular things on the internet. Am I right? So that's it. So in 2022, LA appointed its first DEI fire chief, chosen for being LGBTQ+, right? She implemented a 3-year program to increase diversity because, really, other than fire trucks and water, what fire departments really need is diversity. Gender and racial diversity and sexual orientation diversity, because nothing puts out a fire like L. What? I don't know what that means exactly, but that's what they do in California. Pretty amazing stuff. So they do, and here's the woman. She's representative of the LGBTQ+ juggernaut. And her first mission was to increase diversity, not the number of fire trucks or firefighters or fire hydrants with water flowing through them and stuff. And then, you got Gavin Newsome, too, and it turns out that the reservoirs where you might find water, well, not doing so well in California. I don't know if they look to the left, which it seems they usually do. They might see the giant Pacific Ocean there. It's the largest ocean on the planet Earth. Perhaps they should desalinate water and fill their reservoirs and and water the crops and make sure there's water to fight the fires in the forests that they didn't clean or groom, and maybe increase the number of firefighters. Way down on firefighters there. Not a lot of water. Democrats. I don't think Democrats are good at very much. But luckily, Los Angeles has its first female and LGBTQ fire chief. So they got that going for them. Remember what President Trump said to Gavin Newsome? That's coming up. Chris here with a list of things that none of us should trust. The Washington Post, the New York Times, anything on CNN. Here's a list of things that I do trust. The Washington Times. Support real journalism for just $1 a week at washingtontimes.com/Chris. Won't get fooled again unless you're a California voter, in which case it's a very great likelihood that you will get fooled again. All right, let's go to the telephones, Michael. We remain at 888-630-9625. Let's go to Matt, calling from Sandusky, Ohio. Matthew, you're on the Chris Plant Show.
Well, good morning, Elvis. Thanks for taking my call.
You bet. Do you know that Elvis would have turned 90 today?
Today? No kidding. What an approach. I did not know that.
Isn't that wild? Yeah.
90 years old. He should still be around, doggone it.
Yeah, he should. He should. That's funny that you mention it. Yeah. Crazy. So I'm sorry I interrupted.
It is. Oh, you're fine. I appreciate your show and taking my call. Very timely. Last night I was listening to the Michael Berry show, Chris, and he interviewed a lady, Susan Crabtree, a political correspondent with Real Clear Politics, and an apparent member of good standing of the Fourth Estate. She wrote a book. I think it's recent. It's called Fool's Gold. It's about the corruption in California and how it's being exported all across America. It has to do with PG&E and how they're not, well, one of the things, I guess, I'm sure there's lots more in the book, how they're not being held accountable for the deaths of 84 people they pled guilty to, and how their little tentacles are all invested in California politics. And just coincidentally, the Kamala Harris office never did pursue the full prosecution of PG&E. So I wanted to let you know about that.
Think there might be money, campaign funds or something might have been involved there somewhere. If we only had, I'm glad you mentioned, an esteemed member of the Fourth Estate in good standing, Susan Crabtree. There are a few out there who are truth seekers and truth tellers. And listen, California has, in the name of environmentalism, they've created an environmental catastrophe, an environmental time bomb, a burning fuse, and we're watching that now. Now, with California fires raging all over the place, beautiful Pacific Palisades, Ronald Reagan, the Reagans used to live in Pacific Palisades and a really cool California ranch house, classic California ranch, and beautiful, wonderful. Now, I was talking to you about because in California, run by lefties, run by liberals, they do everything wrong, of course, because it's their nature. It's a requirement, I think. But I told you about the fire chief. They have a fire chief that is a woman. Okay, great. She's a representative of the LGBT community. Everybody loves lesbians. Who doesn't? Come on. So we got that going for us. But the woman was chosen because, it's a DEI thing you wouldn't understand. But the amazing part, now we've got a news story for you from the NBC local station in Los Angeles, California, when the woman was made the fire chief, and they couldn't have been more excited because she's LGBTQ. Can she? And then she said she wants to have lots more women because diversity is very, very important, according to her. And they've got, can you carry a 200-pound man out of a burning house? Well, that's not really important as long as you're LGBTQ and you're WOC. Although she's not OC, is she? She's a Caucasoid. But the woman that was made fire chief. Luckily, Los Angeles has its first female and LGBTQ fire chief. It's now on the Twitter again and all that stuff. But they were excited at the NBC local station to announce this watershed, if you will, event in Los Angeles political history.
I'm super inspired.
She took time out of her already busy schedule to tell us about her vision for the department's future, one that includes a 3-year strategic plan to increase diversity.
People ask me, well, what number are you looking for? So I'm not looking for a number. It's never enough.
Out of 3,300 city firefighters, only 115 are women right now. She's already looking at ways to change that. She's quick to point out that doing so has a greater purpose, attracting the best and brightest for the job.
They feel included, they feel valued, and they feel part of a cohesive team.
The chief also checks another box when it comes to inclusivity and
Checking
diversity
boxes
at this department. She's a proud member of the LGBTQ community.
Should you use checking boxes in that context? I mean, that's a little bit of a, and so they've got, this is what they're very excited about. They're very excited that the fire chief is a woman. Okay, great. But again, can you put out a fire? Can you climb a roof, use a big circular saw to cut a hole to ventilate and put the fan in there and then lower yourself down and rescue a 200-pound man that's unconscious? Because I think that's actually the job of firefighter. That's the thing about being a firefighter. It's not a DEI area. At least it shouldn't be. But in Los Angeles, it is. And then we've got Gavin Newsome. Gavin Newsome in 2020, 4.5 years ago or so, there were massive fires in Los Angeles, California. And then President of the United States, Donald John Trump, went out to California to witness the damage from the giant fire. And Gavin Newsome was standing there. He was doing, I think, a TV ad at the same time for moose jelly for hair. You know, they got that moose jelly for your hair. It's, what do they call it? Jelly mousse? Is that what it is? Jelly mousse. It's moose jelly. Some people call it the moose jelly. And President Trump standing there, and Gavin Newsome was posing for the cameras and winking at the lady reporters. And Donald Trump was talking about how you could prevent forest fires in the future.
Hopefully this is going to be the last of these, because this was a really, really bad one. And I know Gavin's committed. We're all committed. I'm committed to make sure that we get all of this cleaned out and protected. We've got to take care of the floors, the floors of the forests. Very important. You look at other countries where they do it differently, and it's a whole different story. I was with the president of Finland, and he said, we have a much different, we're a forest nation. He called it a forest nation. And they spend a lot of time on raking and cleaning and doing things, and they don't have any problem. And when it is, it's a very small problem.
But Gavin Newsome is Forrest Gump, see, so it's one of the problems they've got in California. You got Democrats running everything. So you're being overrun by gangs from Latin America. Your schools have gone completely to hell. People are fleeing. Businesses are fleeing. The place is literally on fire. They've got everybody, every house in California is worth like $10 million or something now. Nobody can afford to live there. But everywhere you look, they've got these. And it's really, there's like $4 million houses everywhere and $6 million houses. It's Malibu. And you look at the videos of some of these houses burning, and they look like they're the size of hotels, and they're giant. They're quite amazing. The great actor and fun conservative and fun Twitter voice, James Woods, has been on Twitter. We call it X now, formerly known as Twitter. We're going to say that for the next 25 years because of liberals. But back in 2020, the British Broadcasting Corporation, the BBC, had a story Trump ramps up. Oh, wait, this is a different one. I want to get to that one too. But they covered President Trump being out there with Gavin Newsome, and of course he was mocked for saying that Finland takes care of their forests and they don't have big forest fires like that, right? And Trump was attacked because when Trump makes sense, the news media attacks him for making sense. That's how they work, the news media, because you know why? Democrats, because they're Democrats. That's actually why. And I started to talk about President Trump, who held a giant press conference yesterday. So it's a horrible, terrible thing. It obviously, a horrible, terrible thing what's happening in California. And they've got the fire chief, and we're hearing from people that they've got fire hydrants without water. Their reservoirs are low. They've got all kinds of logistical problems, manpower problems, equipment problems. Their reservoirs are low. Their forests have not been groomed, but their school children have. The fire chief, though, they're very proud, is a woman who is LGBTQ. Wonderful. Just check Pornhub for that, but that's another thing. And the mayor, they've got a mayor who's a radical Democrat extremist, Mayor Karen Bass, who is in Africa. She's in Ghana for the inauguration of John Dramani Mahama as Ghana's president. So she's not there, just like the Democrat head of the FBI in New Orleans, the special agent in charge of the New Orleans field office. He was in Europe on New Year's Eve when he knew they had New Year's Eve coming to New Orleans, and they had the Sugar Bowl, a big college football bowl game happening on New Year's Day, and he was gone. When you're a Democrat, you're a Democrat all the way, right? From your first cigarette to your last dying day. So she's gone. And that's okay, because when you're a Democrat, the news media doesn't attack you for that sort of stuff. That's why it's good to be a Democrat, because you can, be out there carjacking grandmas when you're the mayor of Los Angeles, and they will stop to admire your marksmanship and your handling of a pistol. That's the thing about being a Democrat. Pretty amazing stuff.
It's good to be the king.
It is good to be the king, isn't it? And with the news media. Now, there are a couple of, I'm going to get to President Trump's press conference yesterday at Mar-a-Lago, where a lot of great stuff was said by President Trump. And the news media, they're soiling themselves again, because that's what they do. And the British Broadcasting Corporation has a headline on this, too. Trump ramps up threats, which is not true, to gain control of Greenland and Panama Canal. Greenland and Panama Canal, right? You know that Harry Truman wanted to buy Greenland? Harry Truman wanted to buy Greenland when he was president of the United States, not when he was a haberdasher or anything like that. He didn't have that kind of money. But he wanted to, that would have to come from his personal funds. When he was president, end of World War II, the Soviet Union was becoming the Soviet Union that we knew for so long. And he's like, we should probably take over Greenland, turn into a giant military base. We do have a couple of bases there, and for strategic reasons. But Trump ramps up threats to gain control of Greenland and Panama Canal, right? And they're really spun up about this. They're very wild about this. And there is a very funny, because the great people at the Babylon Bee are funny people, and they've got a great headline I want to get to on that, because they say President Trump, what does he want to call it? The moon. He wants to take over the moon and call it what? Moon America. We should call it. We like Moon-a-lago better. Moon-a-lago, take over the moon. The United States takes over the moon. After all, we're the only ones that have landed on it. We landed on the moon 6 times. 12 men have walked on the moon. They were cisgender, patriarchal white men and straight, not members of the LGBTQ community. 12 men have walked on the moon. They're all Americans. We hit golf balls on the moon. Some of them are still there. We drove dune buggies on the moon. Those are still there, too. And if we don't own the moon, who does? We're the only ones that have planted flags on the moon. 6 American flags on the moon, because we planted them there. So if we don't get to keep the moon, who does? We certainly ought to get to keep the moon. I think everybody knows that. Am I right? Yes, I am. Of course I am. Yeah, here it is, the Babylon Bee. Trump announces plan to rename the moon, quote, Space America. Space America. We prefer Moon-a-Lago, though. I think Moon-a-Lago would be a lot more fun. That's a great idea. But President Trump did have a lot of stuff to say about the Panama Canal, which the Chinese have been taking over incrementally and, in a Chinese way, very Chinese way. Some say it's inscrutable, but I don't think so. I think it's scrutable. The reality is the Chinese are trying to take over the world in the 21st century. They've said it out loud many times. And liberals in America are fine with that. They say, well, the 20th century was called the American century. So the 21st century is going to be the Chinese century. Never mind the fact that they've murdered 50 million to 75 million of their own people in the name of bringing about paradise, utopia, socialism. The left is fine with that. And, of course, other commies elsewhere, the Soviets, they killed about 30 million of their own people. And then you can go around the world. Let's go to Pol Pot in Cambodia and the commies in Vietnam and the commies in Cuba. They don't do much well, but they kill people pretty well. That's something they do. And so we got that going. Now, President Trump yesterday at Mar-a-Lago held a major league, an epic press conference, and it really was. And he covered not only the waterfront, but practically everything else, I got to say. Now, let's go to, let's fly over number one. This is one of my favorites. Let's go to number two, because President Trump is warning Hamas, the radical Islamic jihadi terrorists, that inspired the savage in New Orleans on New Year's Day, very late New Year's Eve, but it was after midnight. And President Trump release the hostages, or we're going to come for you, you troglodytes.
If they're not back by the time I get into office, all hell will break out in the Middle East. And it will not be good for Hamas, and it will not be good, frankly, for anyone. All hell will break out. I don't have to say anymore, but that's what it is.
Did you hear two reporters yelling, are you going to Are you going to That never happened once during 4 years of Biden. Did any fake reporter cut off the President of the United States and yell some idiot political point? And I've got to say, I only have one objection when it comes to that response from President Trump. I would say all hell will break out, right? All hell break loose, all hell break out. What do you say? You say all hell will break out. He said all hell, he said all hell will break out. I said all hell breaks loose. Isn't that what happens? Breaks loose? That's how the phrase goes. I'm sorry, I apologize for screwing that up. But they had better. And I got to tell you, I believe that he will whoop some Hamas if they don't release certainly the American hostages and the Israeli hostages too, because now the United States is back on the side of civilization. And Joe Biden and the Democrats, they're the left. I don't know how many times I have to say this, but I'm going to say it again. They're not liberals, the left. And I just ticked off a few of the accomplishments of the left in the 20th century. Massacre of Mao Zedong, 1949, the Communist Revolution there. And they murdered 50 million of their own people, up to 75 million, some researchers will tell you, 75 million of their own people. The Soviets murdering about 30 million of their own people. They also used the judicial system against their political enemies, jailed their political enemies, created the Gulag Archipelago in Siberia and beyond in the Soviet Union. Ronald Reagan, the great Ronald Reagan, collapsed the Soviet Union, saved humanity, saved Western civilization. The Biden administration, representing the left, not on the side of civilization, not on the side of Israel, funding Hamas, funding Iran. It's time to get back to funding civilization, and that's Israel, not Hamas, not Iran. Am I right? Of course I'm right. And I've got a lot of President Trump coming up because his press conference yesterday was amazing, and he covered so much, and some of it's hilarious, too. We're at 888-630-9625. All right, I'm going to get to President Trump's press conference at Mar-a-Lago yesterday. Great stuff. Greenland, Donald Trump Jr. was in Greenland yesterday. He flew up there on President Trump's private Boeing 757 airplane, Trump Force One, landed in Greenland. I talked about it a little bit yesterday. It's a walkthrough. Like some people go look at a condominium. The Trump family went to Greenland. Hey, maybe we'll buy this place. It's, only the size of the Midwestern United States. Maybe we'll pick that up. And Denmark, they got this guy in Denmark. They own Greenland, because of the Vikings or something. And, European history goes back a little farther than our history, and it does. But President Trump, the Monroe Doctrine, President James Monroe, 1823, the Monroe Doctrine, warned European powers not to interfere in the affairs of the Western Hemisphere, because those Europeans, they were still going around clobbering people and conquering people. And James Monroe said, no more of that. This is ours, spheres of influence. So you stay out of our neighborhood, and we'll still come and save you from the Germans over and over again. And then we'll come and save you from the Russians, but the Soviets, But never mind that, the Monroe Doctrine. And it worked for a long, long time. It helped maintain the peace and global stability and prevent war. It was good. And now the New York Post today, the front page of the New York Post is hilarious. It's Donald Trump smiling and holding a pointer, and he's pointing the pointer at Canada, And the front page of the New York Post, the Don Roe Doctrine, kind of like the Monroe Doctrine, but the Don Roe Doctrine. And it's too funny because it's Trump's vision for hemisphere, right? And the Panama Canal becomes the Pan-MAGA Canal. And he did, listen to this, the Gulf of Mexico, going to rename it the Gulf of America. Why does Mexico get the naming rights on the Gulf? We've got as much of the Gulf, even more than Mexico has. So maybe it should be the Gulf of America instead of the Gulf of Mexico. We renamed the Persian Gulf, didn't we? We renamed the Persian Gulf. It was kind of the U.S. military renamed it the Arabian Gulf. Now the U.S. government calls it the Arabian Gulf and not the Persian Gulf. The Persians still call it the Persian Gulf, but that's another story for another day. And then Greenland is crossed out, and it says our land. Our land. This land is our land. This land is not your land. Just stay home.